All right, here we are again, ready for number 112. I hope you guys can hear me. I've got my mic set up just a little different from normal. All right, here we go. So last year was kind of sort of a disaster. Last week. And I've been did the second one. I labeled it 111B, just to see if maybe more people would log in the evening. And it actually didn't work out that way. So anyway, if you guys have questions, and if you have suggestions about a different time, if you want a different time, or if you like this time or whatever, let me know about that too. Any questions? Well, maybe what I need to do is put these on hold. Now, let me tell you, I do have a guest coming in 2 weeks, not next week, the week after that. And this is a friend of mine. He is the one that makes the brass buzzer. And he's not a trumpet player. He's a trombone player, but he makes these things. It's one of those buzz aids. Let me see if I can find mine. I'll be right back real quick. So he makes these, which I really like. And I'm not just saying this. I'm not the kind of person who would just say I like something just because someone's a friend of mine. I really like this better than the other brands that make these things. And for the main reason, now, to understand this, you have to understand that I don't use this during the routine. Okay? I don't use the buzz aid during the routine. It's just like the burp, except I think better. It's made out of better material. It's made out of brass, right? You put your mouthpiece in, and you're buzzing the mouthpiece while you're holding the horn. Now, to understand why I like this one better than the other brands that do this, is it so quickly goes back to the horn. Oh, sorry about my phone. Let me turn that off. So I can quickly go back and forth. I can go back and forth just with one movement. You see what I'm saying? Now that's important to me because that's how I use these devices. I go back and forth. That's the only time I use it. I don't use it when I'm doing my routine because I think, in fact, I go with my students, I tell them, do not do this on their routine because the whole point of the routine is to develop your most natural embouchure. And the theory behind how my routine does that is we start with what's natural with the buzz, and then we try to make what we do on the horn match the buzz in terms of posture and position and all that stuff. So to me, it's very important that I can switch back and forth so easily because the way I use this device is when I'm practicing music. If I'm cracking the same note, now cracked notes are a fact of life, right? But if I'm always cracking the same note, that means something is wrong. Cracked notes in general, that's not necessarily saying something is wrong. Everybody cracks notes. But if I crack the same notes every time, then something's either wrong with the way I'm hearing it or the way I'm executing it. Something's wrong, right? And the way I fix that sort of thing is by doing this back and forth on the horn. And it really is, in my opinion, the best way to improve accuracy on the horn. And I believe that kind of accuracy is tied to your knowledge of the song. Hello, Cardo. That kind of accuracy is tied to your familiarity with the song. And speaking in terms of familiarity, using this device guarantees that you're going to be that much more familiar. So, that was fourths. I'm between pitches. That's the thing. I've got great relative pitch. I don't have perfect pitch. So if I'm cracking that and if I'm getting the notes wrong, I'm going to do it on them back and forth like that. Anyway, so my point is that the guy that I'm going to have as a guest in 2 weeks is the guy that wrote this, and we're going to talk about wrote this. I'm tired today. I apologize. The guy that makes these devices, I'm having him as a guest, and on the Q and A, so that you guys can ask him questions about his device. All right. So Ganya says, yeah, if you know what it sounds like, you're not going to miss as much. That's right. That's part of the accuracy thing. And I think it's the biggest part of the accuracy thing. There are other things that can cause bad accuracy. Like if you hold your horn static, like death grip on the left hand, that can cause accuracy issues. But yes, hearing it is the most important thing. Hello, Barry Johnson. Good evening from the UK, he says. Very nice. Nice to have you here. All right. So any questions? So I don't mind talking about how I use the device because I would like for him to. That's the thing with the way I teach, right? I don't just teach my way. I mean, what do I mean by that? Of course, I teach my way. I teach in a way that takes into account how other people learn. So I don't, just because I don't use the device on my lip, what are they called? Lip buzz, mouthpiece buzz. Just because I don't do that in my routine doesn't mean I think other people should not. I'm not like that. I remember in the 90s, this guy, I won't even mention his name because it sounds like I'm talking bad about him. But I remember this guy in the 90s, kind of halfway famous. One of those coattail famous guys. In other words, he's famous because he was a student of some other more famous guy. And he's the one that sort of like pushes the method now. And I remember how nasty he was to anybody that taught any different way from the way he taught. All right, we got some questions here. Barry Johnson says, is it good to leave the tuning slide? Uh-oh, I just lost you. Oh, is it good to leave the tuning slide in and use your air to play the trumpet in tune? I think that's a wonderful exercise. As a general rule, probably not. However, and this is trumpet lore, I have to say trumpet lore because there's so much of the trumpet lore that's not true. So we want to, I always preface these kind of statements by saying, yes, I acknowledge that maybe it's not true. But this is apparently the way that Chet Baker got his beautiful sound was he played everything flat. Of course, not flat. Played it in tune, but his horn was pushed in so that he could play flat and be in tune. That's legendary. That's the legend of how he got that sound. And it does make sense to me that someone could do that and would do that if they like that sound. And it also, if you hear his sound, you can tell his sound is different. So this is actually a thing. But, you know, in the modern world, that's almost, what's that word? My vocabulary seems to be, I want to say heresy. That's almost heresy to say something like that because everybody in the orchestral world knows that to get a beautiful sound, now hear me out on this because I'm gonna follow this through. To get a beautiful sound, you have to play to the center of the pitch, and what you're describing is playing low to the pitch. And so everybody, because of the fact that commercial jobs you don't have now the big bands like you used to have. It's not so easy anymore to make your living as a commercial player. So this is my stance on this, right? So now the orchestra guys are like the authority. So because their sound requires you to play to the center of the pitch, that's how everything's being taught today. I remember when I was in college, we would try to get darker sounds, brighter sounds, and I think now we weren't trying to change the pitch, but I think that was part of what we were doing is playing high to the pitch, playing low to the pitch. And I actually believe that part of the reason why I'm so successful playing all these different styles is because of the experimenting me and my buddies did in college with that kind of stuff. And yes, that involves playing lower or higher to the pitch. The higher one is harder. Playing high to the pitch, that's hard because you have to have a lot more control. Gonya says, any advice for fast tonguing above the staff? I know it'll come with practice, but it's hard to develop. So here's the thing. So the way I teach, I believe that the tongue should come up and down for the register. So as you go higher, the tongue comes up higher. To the point where when I'm playing a double C, my oral cavity is so small, my pinky would not fit in there. My oral cavity when I play a super C is more shallow than what my pinky could fit into. Now, conversely, when I'm playing low notes below the staff, my oral cavity feels to me as if it's big enough for a ping pong ball to fit in there. That's low notes. I'm gonna open the oral cavity all the way down there, right? So tonguing in the upper register the tongue has to be in a different position. When you're tonguing from the low register, it's going to look like this. To, 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 to. When you're in the upper register, it's going to be like this. And the reason it takes a while to get used to that is because it's entirely different. Okay? It's entirely different. The position of your tongue in your mouth is now an entirely different position. So that's why it takes so long, is because it's something that has to, and you know what? That's not something you can, I don't believe you can control that consciously. It has to be mental. It has to be subconscious. You have to just do so much of it. That's why, by the way, my routines, the articulation studies, have you tonguing to the top of your range and to the very bottom of your range. There are teachers that believe you should never practice tonguing high, especially multiple tongue. And I break their rules all the time. I think it's actually crucial to practice tonguing up in the upper register. I think it's crucial. You have to spend time doing that, or you're never going to get good at it. And that's because of this. Now, let me clarify also, and I was supposed to clarify something I said earlier. I hope I don't. Let's see. Oh, I was talking about the orchestra people, right? I'll come back to that. I apologize. I got off track. So, clarifying here about the articulation. Not everybody changes their tongue arch. Not everybody changes their oral cavity for the different registers. That's not the only way to play. It's not the only right way to play. It is, I think, the most efficient way to play, but that's just my opinion. Okay? So there are people that what I just said, that won't apply to them. Cardo says, Eddie, how do you know what is the optimal amount of practice so we don't overtrain or undertrain? That's a very good question. You know, I'm more interested in the mental side of that. We could say, you know, psychological. I have a student that is a retired psychologist, and he told me that he doesn't think I should be using the word psychological. He says I should be using the word mental. And that makes sense to me. I'm trying to train myself to say mental instead of psychological. But so there's two. Let's back up here. There's two kinds of over practice. I'm not so concerned about under practice. My stance on under practice has to do with time. So let's say you have a big audition in 5 weeks. The way you know you didn't practice enough is because you didn't cover all the material you had to practice before you got there. Okay, that's when you know you didn't practice enough. And to me, that's the only thing that determines your bottom limit. If you don't have an objective coming up that's like a hard deadline, there's no limit to how long you can take off, no limit to how many days you take off, how little practice you can do per day. I'm almost the opposite of what other people teach when they say you have to absolutely practice every day. I don't believe that. Okay? I disagree with that attitude. I think I actually think that attitude makes us worse trumpet players, not better trumpet players. Okay? Now, how do you know if you've done too much? There's two kinds, as I was telling you, two kinds of too much. There's mental too much, and then there's physical too much. Physical too much, if you're getting bruised, if you are bleeding from the fatigue, like on the inside of your lips, if you get blisters and stuff like that, then that's a clear sign you're playing too much, practicing too much. If your sound becomes airy, and I mean more airy than it normally is, a lot of us, like I have an airy sound to begin with. I know that. So if someone ever says, Eddie, you've got such an airy sound, I don't like your sound, it's so airy. I already know that. That's because my mouthpiece is so big. So yes, you're going to have a more pure sound with a smaller mouthpiece size. I can't play on smaller mouthpiece sizes, so what am I supposed to do about it, right? So, and I've been living with this so long now that this is my sound. This is how I sound, and I don't have a problem with that. So anyway, so we're looking for an airier sound. It's more fuzz in the sound than what you would normally have. That's when you know that you've reached the fatigue point, and you should probably start being careful. Now, with my method, we push through the fatigue 2 days a week, and those 2 days are not consecutive. We push through the fatigue and purposely make ourselves tired 2 days a week. So my answer to this question on the physical side is a little complicated, because there are days we want to push ourselves like that. And then the other days we don't. The other days we want to bring the range down. We want to bring the practice sessions shorter so that you're not pushing yourself to fatigue like that. Okay? Now for the mental stuff, how do you know you're doing it too much practice mentally? How do you know? That's the hardest part. Really, that's the hardest part. How do you know if you're doing too much mentally? I think if you have the right attitude towards music in general, that's just not going to happen. It's when you treat trumpet or music like a god in your life, I think that's when the problems start to happen. I really do. When, like this whole thing about you have to practice every day, I'm not even convinced that the people who say you have to practice every day actually really do practice every day. I'm not even convinced of that, because with my writing, I've told you guys this several times, I keep a log with my practice stuff in it, and it's not just one day. Yes, I practiced on that day. I keep a log of almost everything that I practice. And when I look at that log, it always feels like I practiced more than I did. So I have suspicions that the people who don't keep a log and go around saying you have to practice every day, I have suspicions that they don't. I have suspicions that they probably practice a lot less than they actually think they do. So if you don't treat trumpet like a god, I think it's very difficult for the mental side of it, because think about it. What do I mean by treating it like a god? We all are human beings. In the Christian culture, when we say treat something like a god, what we're saying is you put that thing first in everything in your life. Everything else comes after that. So, when your family needs your attention, you don't practice. If you put your practice in front of your family, you're treating trumpet like a god. If you put trumpet in front of your health, you're treating trumpet like a god. If you're not doing that, the chance of you practicing too much is actually very slim. Talking about the mental side of this. Okay? And there's so many things. I teach these priorities, wholesome musical priorities. Your first priority should be to your belief, your faith, whatever it is that you believe. And this, I believe, when I told my wife about this, she says, well, what about people who are Satan worshipers? And I said, well, in theory, I'm saying yes, they should put their belief in front of playing trumpet. Whether you're Jewish, Muslim, atheist, and yes, I do believe that atheists have beliefs, humanists, all of this should be top priority in your life. Otherwise, what is the purpose of the belief? Really? What's the point of having a belief? I've told people many times over that a belief is wasted brain cells if you don't actually live that way. Right? Wasted brain cells. Belief is not your opinion about what's right or wrong. Belief is how you live what's right and wrong. Right? So your belief should be first. Your family, your health. I put health next. Some other people might not do that, but I do believe health should be next. Your family, your commitments to your family, and then school or work. And music should be fifth on that general list. The only difference between me and most of my students is that my job is playing the trumpet. So my faith comes before my trumpet, my family comes before, my health comes before. I will not do trumpet over and above those things, even though that's how I make a living. Okay? And if you live according to that, then you will not be practicing too much, because life happens. And there's just times when you just should not be practicing. There's just so many times in life when you should not be practicing, because other stuff is so much more important. All right, so moving on. Okay. Barry Johnson says, thanks, you're welcome. Gonya says, the tip of my tongue goes on the bottom teeth up high, like you said. On the bottom teeth or on the bottom of your teeth? You might be, sometimes you can, if you're playing high, you can tongue with the back of your tongue, the top of your tongue, like that. Manme says, aren't we all a little mental? Yes. Thank you for that. Fernando, welcome. Hey, Eddie, do you have any recommendations for an undergrad trumpet octet for NTC? Well, undergrad trumpet octet. So I'm not so caught up on the literature. The only octet I have, which would work for that, but you might not like it, I have this piece I wrote called The Lotus Eater. Lotus Eater is basically, and I saw this in a physical thesaurus many years ago. Lotus Eater is a synonym for daydreamer. And when I finished the piece, I thought, hey, that sounds really daydreamy. So I went to the thesaurus and I looked, what's a synonym for daydreamer? And the synonym was lotus eater. So, and the reason I have to clarify that is because I think some people think that it's a drug reference. It's not a drug reference. I would never put a drug reference in any of my titles or my music or anything. So that's the only octet I have, and I'm not familiar enough with the literature that's out there to really say anything other than that. I'll tell you, I had a 5-piece group from my school where I went in El Paso, and they heard the Lotus Eater and they liked that, but it was a 5-piece group, and they said, do you have any 5-piece music? And so I actually sat down and wrote something for them. And that's what the Voice of the Prophets was. So the Voice of the Prophets, and I have a live recording on YouTube of them playing this. The Voice of the Prophets was a piece that I wrote to be just like, using the same mechanisms as the Lotus Eater, but doing it for a 5-piece group, which was actually harder to write than an 8-piece group because of the odd numbers. I think writing for 5 is hard. All the five quintet stuff that I've written for 5 trumpets, that's been some of the most difficult writing I've had to do. But yes, so people like that piece, but it might be a little bit on the hard side is what I'm trying to say. So, but other than that, I really wouldn't have much to say because I don't know the literature that's out there besides mine. Barry Johnson says, I've been there practicing every day and my lips were struggling. Oh, I've been there practicing every day and my lips were struggling. I've started to rest a few days and my playing has gotten better. Resting my chops. Absolutely. Man-Me says, Barry, I'm experiencing the same right now and decided to just rest a bit. See you guys. That's the story of my life. I've heard so many trumpet players once they learn about the importance of resting. And I have to credit my last trumpet teacher because he's the one that taught me this. Richard Schaefer. He is now in Syracuse, I believe. And he's the one that got me straight on that stuff. I did not used to rest once a week. Today I teach everybody to take at least 1 day off a week, and I mean at least. If you take 2 or 3 days off in the week, that's fine. The only time that's not fine, and I said this earlier, the only time that's not fine is when you have a deadline, and by not practicing enough, you're not going to make it to the deadline. That's how you know you're not practicing enough. And by the way, if you want to make more progress in your career, your trumpet career, I consider everybody who plays trumpet to have a trumpet career. If you want to make more progress, give yourself these deadlines, not fake ones. A real deadline has to include other people. Sort of like the trumpet version of accountability partners, right? Let's say you want to do a Brax Quintet recital, or you want to do a recital. It has to be something that you're going to be held to the gun. If it's just something, oh, I'd like to play all my scales by July, that's not really going to work all that well, at least not for most people. Raimo's here. Hello, Raimo. Nice to see you. Barry Johnson says, that's good, Manly. It really helps. Barry Johnson says, it's not just what you say from the pulpit, it's how you live your life every day. Yes, he's talking about what you believe, right? I have this thing about people who say they believe stuff and then they don't live that way. And it's like, and we have that in music too, right? A lot of stuff that people say they don't actually do in music, in trumpet. Now, a lot of that is cultural. We culturally, we are kind of sort of conditioned to say certain things, and it becomes now an ism. It becomes a what is that word that people use? An idiom. It becomes an idiom, right? And the jazz guys will say, the trumpet guys will say, blah blah blah. And the actual meaning of what they're saying is not actually what they mean. So a lot of those things that we say that aren't true end up being cultural like that, where the actual words don't actually mean what they mean. But there are some also that things that people, they have a belief, they say the belief, but they've never actually done it. Manme says, thou shalt not over practice. Right. I have got this is Raimo now. I've got a problem with a start of sound. It used to start clean, but now it starts too often with a blur. I can see it clearly on waveform. What might be the cause? Okay, so there's there's a bunch of things that could cause that. I would have to hear it and maybe see it to know for sure. But here, let's look at some possibilities. So the first thing we want to look at is air delivery. And one way that we can guarantee that we're getting air delivery is to not tongue the notes. We call these breath attacks. So instead of tonguing the note, we're gonna just blow the air through the note. No, I didn't tongue that. The air just started, the lips started to vibrate. There was no tongue involved there. My tongue was down, not getting in the way. Now, if you can do that and it gets and you get a clean start that way, then most likely what's causing the problem is with your tongue. And with the tongue, there's a whole bunch of stuff. There's a whole bunch of things that can cause that problem with your tongue. If you're tonguing between your teeth, it could be that. If you are tonguing way too high in the mouth, it could be that. If the tongue shape is a strange tongue shape. Now, here's the thing. A lot of times we want to have someone say, this is the answer, right? If it's your tongue, nobody can see it, so nobody can tell you. There's also issues that can cause that with holding the instrument completely steady. So if you're going to play a arpeggio, for example, if you're going to hold the horn exactly steady without having any kind of adjustment as the notes go higher or lower, here's how it should look. Okay, so there should be some adjustment. Those people who grip the horn here and don't let it adjust will have problems like that. So there really isn't a single... Oh, I remember you were telling me about that. Barry Johnson says, amen. Okay, Rodaimo says, the doctors cut off my lower jaw teeth. So that's... I'm trying to think, because I've never worked with anyone with that problem. I've heard and I've read about people who have had that problem. And I'm just trying to imagine. That's why I'm making faces, as I'm trying to think to myself, what... So if I pull my teeth out of the way, so what I'm thinking is, if you pull the jaw down, now some people call this the Philip Ferkus embouchure. They call it that mistakenly, but now it's part of trumpet lore, right? If you pull the jaw down and then tongue cleanly, I think you might see that clean up a little bit. That's just something to try. I'm not saying I have the answer. This is new territory for me. I'm just telling you what makes sense to me. If you pull, as you're playing, pull the jaw down against the lips. The lips are pulling in, the jaw is pulling down. And then when you play, when you first play the note, tongue it solidly. And something else you might consider is just making sure that you play at a higher volume now. Play everything louder now, just until you get the mechanics worked out with this new setup. Okay? But that's something I would strongly recommend trying to see if it helps, is pulling now it's going to make you tired faster, because it's basically an isometric exercise. You're pulling and pushing at the same time, right? You're pulling down with your jaw and pulling the lips tighter, but that should stabilize the lips enough to get you to have a better, cleaner start to the note. Oh, okay, I hope that makes sense. So yeah, I think that should be the first thing you should try, is pulling the jaw down. Raimo says, thank you, I will email you. I need a video lesson or mini. But we'll get that worked out. That sounds good. All right, any other questions? If we don't have any questions, I might quit early because I took one of our cats. My wife and I rescued 5 cats, and they were kittens when we rescued them. Now they're 6 months old, and time to get them fixed. So I have one at the vet right now. I got to go pick it up. And so if we don't have any questions, I'll probably quit now. Barry Johnson says, you had to adjust Eddie, didn't you, because of the shape of your teeth? I remember you saying, yes, I did. Except for, I wouldn't call it an adjustment because my teeth have always been, so my teeth have always been like this. I've never had, what do you call it, braces. I've never had braces or anything. So mine have always been, I've got a corner here and 2 corners on the bottom. And I have to get my mouthpiece around those 3 corners. It's like that, right? I've got 3 corners and the mouthpiece has to go around. If I don't go around the mouthpiece, in fact, we were talking earlier about why I have a airy sound. I have an airy sound because my mouthpiece has to go around those teeth, or otherwise I bleed. And here's the thing, this is something that I find very, very important. I had to make a choice. I had to make a choice in my life. Because an airy sound, Cardo says, thanks again, Eddie. Have a great weekend. Thank you. An airy sound is not acceptable, right? Most people would agree with that. It's only acceptable in smoky jazz, right? Jazz club type context, right? My sound is an airy sound. That it has to be an airy sound. That's what I have. It's sort of like my mustache, right? I don't know if you guys have ever noticed this. Now I have a beard and mustache because I don't know if I should even be saying that. It's not because I like it. Let's put it that way. And one day I noticed in the video when I was editing that these whiskers all go this way. They don't. My face is like all deformed. It just doesn't blatantly obvious, right? So, and growing a beard makes the deformity of my face more obvious. And this is who I am. This is what I have. So when I stand up and play publicly, I have to accept those imperfections that make me who I am. And so part of what I teach is that imperfections are not necessarily a bad thing. It's a very dangerous thing, this pursuit of perfection. We want excellence. Yes, we want excellence. I don't think perfection is part of excellence. I think perfection, the pursuit of perfection, is something that's actually very dangerous, very ugly, because it has ugly ramifications in your playing. Barry Johnson says, I love your sound, Eddie. It sounds great. Well, thank you so much. A lot of it doesn't make it past. So one of the reasons I have my microphone as far away from my bell is so that you don't hear all that. So now everybody has a fuzzy sound to an extent. It's just mine is more fuzzy than most people. Graziano says DIT for all brass special device by Google. Oh wow. That sounds like an ad. I don't even know what that means. All right. Have you installed Signal app? Nope. I don't know what that is. I apologize. I don't know. Okay. Okay, guys. I'm going to go fetch a cat. This is my first time taking one of our pets in. I've taken feral cats to the vet to get fixed. I've never taken a pet, and on the way there, I'm thinking, oh, I don't like this, But you got to do it. Otherwise, you're going to have kittens, like, multiplying. Anyway, so thank you guys for hanging out. It's always nice to hang out with you. I enjoy answering your questions and hanging out. Okay, God bless you. And we will see you next time. Have a great weekend and a good week.